Shalom, shalom, Israel's brothers, Abiyallah.
Brother Marcos.
Coming back at you to know another cold cut. I'd like to give our honor and glory and praise to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. All right, coming back at you with another cold cut. Going into, we went into a few milk, some bread topics. Now we want to kind of dive into some more prophecy. Understand that America's on his last toenail, on his last toe in this place, man. All right, we right now sitting in Satan's seat. All right, this place has to go. We see a lot of wickedness. I know y'all be seeing a lot of wickedness on a day-by-day basis, but we can't forget that this place will burn and this place will go. Let's see how pursuant to Isaiah the 19th chapter. It's going to be Isaiah the 19th chapter breakdown. May do a part 1 and part 2, depending on how long we get through this. Right, but at the end of the day, this place is confused. This is the confusion of Egypt. Right, let's get into it. Right, it says Isaiah chapter 19 verse 1, the burden of Egypt. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. Now the Lord said the burden of Egypt, meaning the bad news of Egypt. All right, it's not the gospel of Egypt. Right, that's what some people want to hear. It's the gospel of Egypt. No, it's the burden of Egypt. Right, the Lord's riding on a swift cloud. What is that swift cloud? Right, what is that cloud the Lord's talking about? I'm going to go to Exodus chapter 40 and verse 31. Right, this is the book of Exodus chapter 40 and verse number 31. And it says, and Moses, Aaron, and his sons washed their hands and their feet thereat when they went into the tent of the congregation, and when they came near unto the altar, they washed as the Lord commanded Moses. Right, I'm jumping down to verse 34. Then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. That wasn't a rain cloud. It wasn't about to thunder and pour rain over the tabernacle. That's talking about a chariot. The so-called UFOs that Esau wants to call them. Right? Those are chariots. Right? And it says, because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward on their journey. And so when the chariot came up, the children of Israel knew to keep going on all their journeys, right? But the cloud were not taken up, they journeyed not to the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all the generations. That's how you know it's not a regular cloud, because clouds don't produce fire, produce rain, right? The clouds don't produce fire. That's how you know that's talking about the UFO, so-called UFOs, right? Of the Lord. All right, let me get the book of Isaiah chapter 16 verse 8. All right. This is the book of Isaiah chapter 16 and verse 8. And it says, who are these that fly as a cloud and as doves to their windows, right? Because when these chariots move, right, it don't make no sound. It's like doves, right? Doves don't make any sounds when they flap their wings, man, right? They just hear it and they gone. You know, that's how these chariots move. I get appreciate.
Yeah, this the book of this the book of Jeremiah chapter 46 and verse number. I'm gonna start at verse number 13, right? Because Egypt, on a spiritual level, is America. Now we have it's accounts that the Lord has written of with different Egyptians and the Egyptian empire from the different ages, etc. All throughout history, you see Egypt being overthrown. America is modern day Egypt. So the same way ancient Egypt in the time of Exodus, in the time of the prophets Jeremiah, etc., when Nebuchadnezzar was in rulership, when the time of these different kings, even the Greeks, when they took over Egypt, you have a history of Egypt continually being overthrown. And America is modern day Egypt.
Right.
So if America is modern day Egypt, then that means America's latter end is if to be overthrown. And it's going to be overthrown by the Lord. It's Jeremiah chapter 46 and verse number 13. It says, the word that the Lord spake to Jeremiah the prophet. Now Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, shall come and smite the land of Egypt, declare ye in Egypt, and punish Migdol, and punish Noph, and in Tuphanes. Say ye, stand fast and prepare thee, for the sword shall devour round about thee. And the Lord is going to do the same thing in modern Egypt. Have that sword and devour around all about the land of Egypt. All right, let me get this real quick. In the book of Exodus, chapter 14. right? Because again, a brother mentioned the cloud. You had the clouds when you read Exodus 14 talking about the chariots. Now the clouds on one fold are made to protect Israel, right? To watch over Israel. But it's also used to destroy the heathen and the wicked, right? This is the book of Exodus chapter 14 and verse 19. It says, and the angel of God went before the camp of Israel. Let me actually start at verse number 17. It says, and I, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them, and I will get me honor upon Pharaoh and upon his hosts, upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. So the Lord said he's going to get himself honor above the king of Egypt and all his mighty men. And the Lord is going to do that again when he destroys America. It says, verse 18, and the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh, when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh and his chariots and upon his horsemen, and the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them, and the pillar of a cloud. And you see that angel, the Lord called it a pillar of a cloud, right? Because when you look at it, that bright shining light is high up in the sky that represents a cloud. So on one fold, it's a cloud and a protection and a pillar of rest for Israel. It says, I'm going to read that in 19 again. The pillar of a cloud went before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. So the cloud first was leading them. Then it went behind Israel, and it was in between the Egyptians that was pursuing Israel and Israel that was fleeing. It says what? Verse number 20. And it came to pass, and it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and there was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these. So on one fold, to the Egyptians, when they seen it as a cloud of darkness, as fear, right? Because when the Lord comes back, he's coming back in that same manner of destroying the heathen. So and that's spiritual, because again, on another fold, we look at the chariots, we get excited. Right? When we look at the chariots, you remember the salvation, the promises, being delivered out of America. But then you have the heathen. They see the chariots, and it represents darkness. Right, reading on, it says, and there was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to thee. So that one came not, so one came not near to the other all the night. It says, and throughout the rest of the night, the Egyptians didn't pursue Israel. Why? Because they knew the Lord was defending Israel. All right, let me get this last one. In the book, the classic chapter, Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, the class. Showing that America is that modern day Egypt. It's the book of Revelation chapter 11 and verse number 8. It says, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. And this is that great city, modern day Egypt. And again, the Lord is going to come with that swift cloud and overthrow Egypt. Let's get this real quick in Psalms, the 104th chapter. Right? Because again, the clouds are angels. All right, the cloud is another word for a chariot. It's Psalms chapter 104 and verse number 3. It says, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariots, who walketh upon the wings of the wind. So the Lord said the clouds are the chariots, the same so-called vehicles that the angels ride in, right? That you read about in Zechariah, you read about in Ezekiel, all throughout the Bible, you read about the clouds, the pillar of fire, all right, a roll. The Lord has a whirlwind. The Lord has different names for these vehicles that the angels ride in. Nevertheless, when you read in Isaiah the 19th chapter, the Lord refers to it as a cloud. It says, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire. And the spirits, the angels of the Lord, they maneuver in those clouds, those vehicles that the Lord set up even before the foundation of the earth, before the world. Right? And again, these same vehicles are going to come back, save Israel, and destroy Egypt, modern day Egypt. Right, you got it.
Khan, that's right. So Isaiah chapter 19, verse 1 again, the burden of Egypt. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, which we know is a chariot, and shall come into Egypt, right? And the idols of Egypt shall be moved as presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst thereof. And now, just a few quick precepts showing America's Egypt, right? It's Deuteronomy 28:68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, By the way, where I spake unto thee, thou shalt see no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you, showing you that America is Egypt. The Lord is coming in with a chariot into America. This is his first destination. This wicked kingdom is his first destination to put a stop to this kingdom. Huh? All right, let me get the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 15 and verse 10. All right. This is the book of 2nd Ezra 15 and 10. Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them to now dwell in the land of Egypt. Right now, we know it's talking about America. But I will bring up with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm and smite Egypt with plagues as before. So it's not talking about ancient Egypt, because the Lord said as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. So we know that this Egypt, again, is talking about America. All right, let's go to Revelations 11 and 8. All right. It's Revelations 11 and 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. So this place, Sodom and Egypt, where it's a great place of homosexuality, transformism, right? We don't, transformism, you know what I mean, right? And guess what? Slavery, Egypt. Hey, guess what? This place is full of dead bodies of, spiritually of our people, with the souls of men being taken, as it says in Revelations 18, and physical dead bodies. That's why no justice, no peace marches happen every year, man, for some Jake. You know what I'm saying? That was taken down by the so-called white man. This place is Sodom. This place is Sodom in Egypt, America. Right? You got something on that?
I got one last verse. It's Jeremiah chapter 44 and verse 13. It says, for I will punish them that dwell in the land of Egypt. So it's already prophesied that the Lord is going to punish the inhabitants of the land of the Egyptians. It says that dwell in the land of Egypt, as I have punished Jerusalem by the sword, by the famine, by the pestilence. And the Lord is coming with pestilence and plagues to bring upon modern day Egypt. Again, which would be Babylon the Great, America. Right, you got it.
Come. So Isaiah chapter 19, verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. Now, what does that sound like? That sounds like all the other chapters we've been reading in 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, the 16th chapter, right? That Egyptians and people, you're talking about the Egyptians, talking about that and the inhabitants and the citizens of Babylon the Great, right? Because if this is Egypt, then who are the Egyptians? This is America. It's talking about the Americans. I'm going to get the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13 and 30. All right, you have people that's going to be warring against each other for food, bread, all types of manner of things, right? It's 2nd Ezra 13 and 30. And it says, and he shall come to the astonishment of them that dwell on the earth. And one shall undertake to fight one against another, one city against another, one place against another, one people against another, and one realm against another. Cities are going to be fighting each other. Civil wars are going to be kicking off. Places are going to be fighting. Hey, the Lord said one people against another. You're going to have race wars. You're going to have wars, World War III on a high level. And one realm against another. You're going to have the Lord fighting America, man. Not fighting, taking down, destroying this place. Destroying the world, man, with fire. These are the things the Lord said was going to happen. All right, I'm going to Matthew 10 and 21. The Egyptians will be set against the Egyptians. This is Matthew chapter 10 and verse 21. And it says, and the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child, and the children shall rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to death. So you're going to have brother delivering up father, brother delivering up brother, son delivering up father, mother delivering up daughter. The household going to be set against each other, man. Right? The whole household is going to tell you that. Verse 21, and it's 22, and you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved, man. And that's what we're looking for. What the point is, you're gonna have people coming against you. You're gonna have people coming against you. You're gonna be delivered up. You're gonna have people fighting against your neighbor that you see. Hey, how you doing? How's your morning going? He's not gonna ask you how's your morning going in that day. He's just gonna take from you. All right, yeah, appreciate it.
That's the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 15 You brought up verse 15.
I only went to 13.
All right, 2nd Ezra chapter 15 and verse number 15. It says, "For the sword and their destruction draw nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another and swords in their hands. For there shall be sedition among men and invading one another." Right? So the Lord said in that day is going to be sedition among men and invading one another. Meaning what? Like the brother said, you can't go to your neighbor's house, right? For that serve, like how you used to do, right? Go over there, you have fun, etc. No, in that day, that same neighbor's going to be invading your household, right? Trying to take your food, trying to take your women. And that day is going to be all men for themselves, right? You're not going to have that protection that you used to have, or that so-called comfort. No, when that day hit, it's going to be every man for himself, right? Reading on, it says, verse 15 again, "For the sword and their destruction," it's like verse 16, "For there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." And all power is going to be to the people. Like the government is not going to have any power in that day. Right? The government is so-called elites. Right? The power is going to be every man for himself. Right? And in that day is going to be survival of the fittest. Right? The same way how it is in the so-called animal kingdom. Right? The strongest survive. Right? The most fit survive. The same way how that spirit is coming back to the inhabitants of Babylon, but not just Babylon, but the whole earth. It's the book of Matthew, chapter 24, and verse number, I'm going to start at verse 19, right? Verse 19. It says, "Woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be." So the Lord says it's going to be great tribulation that has never been upon the earth that's coming to this place. And again, this is time to prepare your mind, right, your spirit on the days that's coming to pass, right? On another photo is Jacob's trouble, right? Jacob's trouble, all hell, destruction, killings, robberies, right? Iniquity is going to be increased above that which we see now, right? But you got it.
All right. Khan, that's right. So let's go back to Isaiah chapter 19, verse 3. All right. Start verse 2 again. It says, "And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols, and to the charmers, and to them that have familiar spirits, and to the wizards," right? Because America is heavy in sorcery. That's why Russia calls this place the Great Satan. Why do you think they call America the Great Satan? Why do you think they have the souls of men? Because you can come here to sell your soul to Satan. They practice idolatry, witchcraft. They still serve Baal, man. Baal. They still serve that God at the Bohemian Groves, right? At these secret councils, these secret islands that they have. They have secret islands that you can't go to. But guess what? This is what they're doing with familiar spirits. They put it in your songs, propaganda in your TV shows, indoctrinating your children. They conjure up spirits on the left-hand side, drinking baby's blood, pedophilia. This place is wicked. And they're going to seek to these things again like it's going to save them. Right? This is the book of Isaiah chapter 47 and verse number 9. Right? And it says, "But these two things shall come to thee in one day, in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and of thy great abundance of thy enchantments. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, None seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thy heart, I am, and none else beside me." Right? Because America, like I said, trusted in sorceries, trusted in wickedness, trusted in things that profited them not. Let me jump down to verse 13. "Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Right? Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, and the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from the things that shall come upon thee." So the Lord said, get your little weathermen, right? Get your astrologers, your stargazers trying to tell what's going to happen on the earth. You kind of rearrange it. You got China trying to create a fake sun, You got America just putting all types of idolatry and sin upon the earth with witchcraft. You got these nations that just do what they want to do, right? Using sorcery, praying to these gods. The Lord said, let that come, let them help you in the day that I come. Let's see what happens, not knowing the Lord is controlling all those spirits anyway. Right, I'm going to get the book of Ezekiel 21 and 21. All right, it's Ezekiel chapter 21 and 21. And it says, For the king of Babylon stood at the parting of the way, at the head of the two ways, to use divination. He made his arrows bright. He consulted with images. He looked in the liver. Right? Because in the ancient world, on our men on the right-hand side used the animals. Right? And these angels knew how to do it as well. Even in the book of Tobit, they looked in the liver. But these nations try to do it on the left-hand side. They consulted with images made with man's hands. Right, using divination. When the Lord said use divination, but this is what the king of Babylon does. You got it.
Come on, it's the book of Numbers, chapter 22, and verse number 1. Right now, you had the king of Moab, right, Balak. He tried to curse Israel, tried to go to Balaam and cast spells upon Israel, but it didn't come to pass. Right, because the Lord is with Israel. The same way how you have right now nations throwing up curses and they seeking warlocks and wizards on the left-hand side. You had nations doing that all the way back in the time where we were in the wilderness. Right? So this is the book of Numbers, chapter 22 and 1. And the children of Israel set forward and pitched in the plains of Moab on the side Jordan by Jericho. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw that all Israel had done to the Amorites. Right? So they seen the might of our people. It says, and Moab was sore afraid of the people because they were many, and Moab was distressed because of the children of Israel. It says, and Moab said unto the elders of Midian, now shall this company lick up all round about us, as the ox licketh up the grass of the field. And Balak the son of Zippor was king of the Moabites at that time. So this man is literally shaking in his boots because he heard what we did to the Amorites. Right? They heard what we did to these nations before, so now he's nervous. He don't know what to do. Right? Verse 5. It says, he sent messengers therefore unto Balaam, the son of Zippor, to Bethel, which is by the river in the land, by the children of his people, to call him, saying, behold, there is a people come out from Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against me. Come now, therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. So he grabbed another man and said, hey, come curse these people. Right? You do have spirits on the left-hand side, actual men that know how to throw up curses. Right? They know how to do these different things, and they all into wickedness and mischief. We was talking about that last night.
Right.
You got people opening up their third eye, dealing with spirits, getting all hell breaking loose. Right? Reading on, it says, peradventure I shall prevail, that we may smite them, and that I may drive them out of the land. For I wot that he whom thou blesseth is blessed, and he whom thou curseth is cursed. Jumping down to verse number 12. Right, jumping down to verse 12, it says, and God said unto Balaam, thou shalt not go with them. So you had Balaam, he told him, hey, you know what? Don't go up against this people. It said what? Thou shalt not go with them. Thou shalt not curse the people, for they are blessed. Right? And we're blessed. Why? Because we have the living God on our side. The Lord said in Romans chapter 8, let me get this real quick, in Romans chapter 8 and 31. Right? It's the book of Romans chapter 8 and verse number 31. And it reads, Romans 8 and 31. It says, what shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? Right? So no curse, no wizardry, no spell can have the men of the Lord, right? The elect, the servants of the Lord be overthrown. Not a witch, right? Not a warlock, not a demon or spirit. Why? Because the Lord is with us. And it's, that same spirit is going to be back in the last days. We have spiritual wickedness increased on the left-hand side, but the Lord protected the saints. It's the book of 1 Samuel chapter 28 and start at verse number 7. It says, Then said Saul unto his servants, Seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And the servant said to him, Behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit in Endor. Right, so you have Saul, the Lord departed from Saul. Right, and now what is Saul doing? He's seeking familiar spirits. Right, the Lord is not with these other nations. Right, that's why they cleave to these gods, these idols. They seek the wizardry and idolatry. Why? Because the living God is not with them. So they have to store up magic on the left-hand side. You read in Genesis, the 4th chapter, Cain built a city, a whole city, after the Lord rejected him. How did he do that? With that knowledge, he got the knowledge from Satan on the left-hand side. And again, you have these nations, their wickedness and everything that they have in their power comes from the left-hand side. And you keep reading in this chapter, you had Saul, he made this woman conjure up Samuel. Right. And Samuel came down and told him, hey, the Lord is not with you. I can't do nothing for you. It is what it is. Right. And again, you have the same spiritual wickedness in high places in these last days. All right, you got it.
All right. That's right. Let's go back to that in Isaiah chapter 19. All right, it's Isaiah chapter 19, verse 4. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts. Right, talking about Yahweh Shai. And the water shall fail from the sea, and the rivers shall be wasted and dried up, and they shall turn the river far away, and the brooks of defense shall be emptied and dried up. The reeds and the flags shall wither. The paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouth of the brooks, and everything sown by the brooks shall wither, be driven away, and be no more. What is that going into? Meaning everything you see in this society, everything you see that has root in this world that you think is gonna abide, the Lord is gonna uproot everything. Everything you think is sown, you think is here to stay, the Lord is literally gonna uproot it like a plant and throw it to the side, man. All right, let me get the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 16, verse 30. All right. 2nd Ezra chapter 16, verse 30. Like you uproot plants. They had a root. They looked like they were going to be there, endure all types of tribulation. But the Lord said he's going to uproot this place. All right, 2nd Ezra chapter 16 and verse 30. And it says, verse 39, and as in the orchard of olives, and let's get an example of that. As an orchard of olives, upon every tree there are left 3 or 4 olives. Or when a vineyard is gathered, there are left some clusters of them that diligently seek through the vineyard. Even so in those days there shall be 3 or 4 left by them that search their houses with the sword. And the earth shall be laid waste, in the fields thereof shall wax old, and her ways and all her paths shall go full of thorns, because no man shall travel through through. That's what it means when this place that looks like it was sown. America has businesses. You got big buildings. You can do whatever you want here. Currency, night shows, restaurants, right? What else? You got concerts. You can do whatever you want here, and it looks like it's gonna be here to stay. But this is the days it's coming to. Or 3 or 4 of them is gonna leave, left searching houses with the sword. That's what it's gonna come to in that day. That's what it means. The Lord says he's gonna uproot this place utterly, man. All right, let me see if I can get that closer. All right. This 2nd Ezra 5 and 3. In the land that thou seest now to have root, right? This land that you see to have root, what? Sees now to have root, shalt thou see wasted suddenly. So the Lord said this land that looked like it has root, it's going to be wasted suddenly in that day, man. The Lord's going to take this place and throw everything to the side. Everything that's sown by the water, because the plants thrive by the water, right? Because the water's right there. And guess what? This America, even though it thrived by the water, the Lord is going to uproot this place. Yes,
Yeah, I got a quick precept. It's the book of Matthew chapter 13 and verse Matthew chapter 13 and verse number 4. It says, and when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured it. Some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth, wherewith they sprung up, because they had no deepness. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Right? And America doesn't have any root. Right? America's foundation, again, is built off wickedness. Your root and your foundation and your structure, if you want it to stand, it can only stand if the Lord is with it. But again, we know that America's foundation is not built off of the Lord. So what does that mean? It's going to be rooted up. Right? Sin is going to come and he's going to take up that foundation. Let's get this real quick in the book of 2nd Esdras. Slide. Right? The Lord will root up America and burn everything therein. First, let's get this in Ecclesiastes. It's the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1. All right, and verse number 1. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and 1. It says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king of Jerusalem. It says, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Why is everything vanity? Because everything is going to be rooted up and destroyed out of Babylon. Again, right? The Lord is not, let me just get this 2nd Esdras 13. The Lord is not coming back to play with America. Everything that we see, right, from the table to the water bottles to the lights, literally everything in this present life is vanity. Because everything is going to be here one day and eventually it's going to be cast away. It's the book of 2nd Esdras chapter 13 and verse number 11. It says, and they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burnt them up, every one, so that upon the sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. So Ezra said when he's seeing this vision, after everything covered up, after everything stopped, he only seen dust and smell of smoke. He didn't see any more buildings. He didn't see any more people. He didn't see any more so-called skyscrapers. No more cars. It said everything, right? It says, I'm going to read that last part again, right? It says, so that upon the sudden, meaning it happened all of a sudden, right? With a quick. It says on the sudden, of an innumerable multitude, nothing was to be perceived. So it went from an innumerable multitude, then all of a sudden, nothing was able to be perceived, but only dust and the smell of smoke. When I seen this, I was afraid. So the Lord, that's how much power and might the Lord is coming back with. I mean, this place is literally going to be laid with the ground, right? You read in 2nd Maccabees, it said Jerusalem was almost even with the ground, was laid to the ground because of how much destruction was upon the city, right? How the heathens came and they defiled the cities, etc. Let's get this to 2nd Maccabees chapter 4. Read us chapter 4 and verse number, maybe chapter 8. Right, this 2nd Maccabees chapter 8 and verse 3. That's just talking about Jerusalem on the main fold, but nevertheless, this same punishment and treatment is coming to Babylon. Right, 2nd Maccabees chapter 8 and 3. Get right to the point. It says that he would have compassion upon the city, sword defaced, and ready to be made even with the ground. So when you had these other nations during the time of the Hasmonean dynasty, or the beginning of it, we had to go to war, etc. Nation was coming up against us. It said Jerusalem was ready to be made even with the ground. And when you go into Jerusalem, how it looks, it's a very beautiful city, or was a very beautiful city. They destroyed the city, and now the buildings, the houses, it was all literally laid flat, waste to the ground. That same spirit is coming upon Babylon the Great. The only difference is that the Lord is not going to rebuild up America. There's not going to be Babylon part 3 or part 4. Right? You had the Neo-Babylonians, you had the ancient Babylonians, the Neo-Babylonians, America, Babylon. You got another Babylon coming in the future. No, this is the last captivity, the last Egypt. This was going to be laid with the ground. It says, and hear the blood that cried unto them. Right? Nevertheless, the point is how Jerusalem was laid even with the ground is the same way when Ezra seen that vision. He could perceive nothing but the smell of smoke and dust everywhere. I was laid with the ground. That same spirit is coming to this place after the mist was dropped, etc. All right, you got it.
All right. That's right. It's Isaiah chapter 19, verse 8. The fishers also shall mourn. Fishers are workers, right? And it says, and all that cast angle into the brook shall lament, and they that spread nets upon the water shall languish. Moreover, they that work in fine flax, and they that weave networks shall be confounded, right? The reason why is because there's not going to be any work for Egypt. I'm just jumping down to verse 15. Neither shall there be any work for Egypt, right? Which they head or tail, branch or rush may do. The Lord has told you plain, there's not going to be any work. Whether you own a business, whether you are a sanitation engineer, whether you're an audit, tax audit, your IRS, whether you collect tin cans and you sell it, there's not going to be any work for Egypt. There's no networking. The Lord says there's not going to be any networks going on, man. Nothing's going to happen. You're not going to know a guy that knows a guy. I think I can get you with this job. Look, I know nobody's working, but I got a guy. He has his only factory in America. No, it's not happening. There's not going to be an only factory in America, right? In one factory in the middle of nowhere, and you have to have the map, right? Indiana Jones. It's not. There's not any work. There's no payroll. There's no ADP processing. No interviews, right? No resumes. You still got your resume on hand. There's hope. I have my resume from when I did 20 years. No, that's gone, right? Let's go to the book of Isaiah. 2nd Ezra, chapter 16, 45. Right? Jake still carry on his resume. Right? That's folly. Right? It's 2nd Ezra, chapter 16, verse 45. And therefore, they that labor in vain. Right? So in that day, if you labor, it's going to be in vain. You're not going to pay for it. It's going to be like volunteer service. Right? It is what it is. Even now, it's vanity. Now we know we got to live. But the Lord said, all they that labor, basically, you labor in vain. Because there's not going to be any work for Egypt anyway. Right? Let me get another precept. Right, I'm going to go to that book, Isaiah chapter 24, verse 10. Isaiah 24 and 10. The city of confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up that no man may come in. Yeah, every house is shut up now. Right? But in this day, it's going to get worse. After so-called the 19 virus, right? After the 19 virus, then guess what? Every man, they didn't go into the office. They was working from home. In this day, every house is going to be shut up. Right? And it's going to say, there's a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened and the mirth of the land is gone. And the city is left desolation and the gate is smitten with destruction. So guess what? There's not going to be any work. The gates are going to be smitten with this destruction, meaning the leadership of this place. Right? Your Secretary of Council not going to have work. Your Department of Treasury, everybody going to be out of unemployment. Everybody's not going to have any jobs. They're going to be fending for themselves, man. You got some?
I got a book precept. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse number 3. It says, in that day, when the keepers of a house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves to the grinders. So I can read that again. And the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, because they are few. The Lord said that the grinders, which is the workers, is gonna cease because it's few. Meaning, again, like the brother said, all that work that you putting in, you think you're going to get an increase, trying to be a billionaire in this society. You making music video after music video, right? You in the truth, but you still want to have that fame and that love and cleave to the world, as if something is going to be rewarded for you to stand in His life, right? A mansion, right? The Lord said, let me read that again in verse 3. It says, and the grinders cease, because they are few. And those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets, and the sound of grinding is low, and shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. So the Lord's gonna shut down this whole society, right? The same way how it was during the pandemic. Imagine that, but forever, right? Nobody's on the streets. It's no cars. Right, you don't see your damn neighbor. You locked in. Right, you don't see your neighbor because your neighbor done ran away. They dead. Going outside's nothing but dead bodies everywhere. Nobody's working. Why? Because the Lord's gonna shut down Egypt. The Lord's gonna shut down this economic system. Let me get this real quick in Genesis 47, verse number 15. Money in that day is going to be vanity. Right? This Genesis chapter 47 and verse number 15. It says, and when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph. So when all hell breaks loose, the money's going to fail. Again, the same things that happened in ancient Egypt are coming to Babylon. The money's going to fail. The economic system is going to collapse. Right? They're already doing it now with the banks and bank closing. You can't get your money back. Can't get your paycheck. They doing all the things with they giving it to other people. What makes you think that this prophecy isn't going to come to modern day Egypt? Right? Reading on. It says, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph. It says, and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. And that's spiritual. Because when the money was gone, they look who? To Joseph. And when all hell breaks loose, they're going to look to the servants of the Lord. And now in ancient Egypt, they was begging for bread. They was going to Joseph for bread. What is that bread now? This word. Right? So when all hell break loose, you can't find a man of the Lord. Right? You looking for the man of the Lord to seek that to seek that bread. And that day, you know, the bread is not going to be there. This word is not going to be here. It's going to be a famine of the word. It's not going to be how like Joseph was, giving everybody the bread, making profit off of it, off the famine. No, in this modern day time, or the times that's coming up, there's not going to be bread freely given out, right? But you know what I'm saying. Say that. I want to jump the gun, but you got it.
Con, and with that was part 1 of Isaiah the 19th chapter. Lord willing, we can touch on part 2, finishing the rest of these verses down to verse 25 to get the full understanding of what this is talking about. But it's kind of on a time constraint. That's ended here from part 1. Lord willing, you was edified, right? And you took, good notes from verses 1 through 8. A lot of precepts are brought out, and Lord willingly, a part two, if need be, part 3, but part 2 will be out, so you can kind of get the rest of this breakdown through the Spirit. We'd like to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, and like to bid a mighty strong shalom.
Shalom.